Okay, we're going to give a little lesson to you in terms of how to control planes and incorporate spheres. Incorporating sphere motion, as we have discussed in the past, is defined by your feet, and it can basically be the radial distance that you are away from your opponent. So right now, my sphere relative to Stephen here is going to be around him in a motion like this. So I can practice various passing, forward, back passes, all along this sphere that's defined by this radial distance. Radial distance from where I'm at right now with him is approximately his foot length. In other words, if he tried throwing a front kick, or was in the middle right there, he really won't contact me. He'll miss it because of his radius. So now we're going to talk about how to move in radially and incorporate some corkscrews, screw axes, some J hits and exponentials, and just in effect how to control spheres. One question that you were asking was, how do you attack a person? If you're getting ready for a fight and you're in some sort of stance, the question is, what sort of spherical motion or attack do I want to use? I know that this is where it can become difficult at times because you don't necessarily know where to go. A lot of it depends upon other opponents. Remember, in this style, you're fighting multiple people. If you only have one person, then that makes it a little easier if you just have one person to focus on. But in the case of multi-opponents, I'm going to determine, do I have a person here? If so, do I want to use this body to fight against that opponent? Or maybe my next opponent's right behind me. So my goal may be to use him so that he becomes my shield for the person right behind. So when a person is going to start using spheres and they're getting ready to fight, again, define your sphere. Remember that we use screw axes. Well, screw axes can also be defined as being on a sphere, if you really think about it. If I do a rotation this way, which is, in a sense, for him, clockwise in his motion, but I generate a counterclockwise motion at the lower part of his body, I've created a screw axis up his body, or down his body, depending upon how I apply the force. So in other words, I could begin by moving this part this way, and then just as easily, when I was coming in, I could have done this. And so it begins by giving a screw axis on his body. Now, if I apply pressure and force to it, it can be a very powerful thing, depending upon which way I want to take it. If I want to wrap him and pull him across, yeah. If I want to negate the screw axes by altering the position that I go in, all of that makes a difference. The other thing is remember, you can also go in what we kind of define as J hits, exponential hits. Yes, if I come in and I perform a J hit, what am I doing? What I've done is I've just generated a new spherical motion with a tighter radius. So all of these hits that we talk about really are radial distances from his spine, or through his spine, depending upon where I want the sphere to go. So one of the things that I find very effective is that if I know a person's very linear in terms of motion, you can find that out pretty quickly just by putting your hand out toward your opponent. I mean, they'll either respond back with in kind, some sort of motion this way, or a front kick or something. You'll know their basic motion. If they like to sidestep, then you know that you're dealing with something that's a little more advanced. And so your spheres need to be stepped up beyond that person's capability. So let's take an example where maybe my attack begins as a spherical type motion, and I want him to be controlled. So again, I'm the one that's to initiate the attack because that's where you said you had the hardest time. So if I want to initiate the attack, one thing I notice with my opponent right now is that he's already positioned this way. In other words, his body energy is moving in a rotation that is counterclockwise to his position. It's much more difficult for him to open up. So it makes it a whole lot more easy for me to initiate both a linear and a rotational motion on him, just by how I move in. So if I repeat that type, okay, so if he's straight on, did you want to repeat? Yeah, let me repeat here just a little bit. So if I initiate something here where I cause an initial energy in a rotation about his body, and then follow through by bringing my rotation inward, okay, and I continue that screw axis, he's really at my mercy in terms of if I want to break his neck or take him down or whatever. Remember, screw axes or rotationals are not just defined horizontally, they're also defined vertically and in all angles. So just as easily, if we're getting ready to fight, I don't care. So if we're getting ready to fight, in this particular case, what if I decide to use him as basically a ladder, but in effect I'm going over his energy. In other words, this type of a motion. So I literally will climb right over him and drive his head down and just keep going. My energy will be rotationally over him. Gravity will make me drive right down over him. Remember, we can go vertical motion, we can go both up and down. So I can take my rotational axis and drive this way. So if I drive forward this way, again, it creates, I'm working in a sphere, in a circular motion, but driving in that direction.